That kind of boldness, that kind of sense of a mission in life where nobody's going to stop you, get rich or die trying, as he said, had an incredible impact on me. When I did the 50th law, I spent about 8 months basically attached to 50's hip. I followed him to his home in Connecticut where he lived and saw all the weird, strange people there. I was in New York with him and all of his business ventures, G-Unit clothing, books, etc., his management company. I went to where he grew up in Southside Queens, met all his childhood friends, and hung out with him in the streets where he grew up, where he was a crack dealer. And then I was with him in Vegas for the VMA Awards, meeting him with Kanye West and their kind of battle there, and meeting Floyd Mayweather Jr. and all these different incredible adventures. So it was one of the highlights of my life. So I think I understand him in a very deep way. And when I was writing the book or coming up with the idea, I was trying to think, what is the essence of 50? Because if you think about it, hundreds of thousands of young men grew up in similar circumstances, Black young men, as 50, and many of them are dead or ended up in prison or in terrible circumstances because of the very, very adverse circumstances they faced growing up in this part of New York. Why did 50 manage to overcome all of that? What is different about him? How was he different from all these other people that allowed him to surmount all of these terrible circumstances? And when I looked at him, there was this kind of quality of fearlessness, right? He wasn't afraid of anything, basically. And I don't mean this as far as life and death and facing bullets. He wasn't afraid of being criticized. He wasn't afraid of going against other people. He wasn't afraid of offending. He was just extremely ambitious. And so what I learned from him and being around him is, I always thought that I was a pretty fearless person, When I was young, I did things that I would never do now. I was incredibly adventurous. But compared to 50, I saw that I was actually a very fearful person. I had a lot of anxieties. I was worried about what other people thought about me. I was trying to be very agreeable and nice and pleasant to get along with them. And I realized, you don't need to do that, Robert. You can be more abrasive sometimes. You don't have to worry about constantly pleasing people. In fact, sometimes you can deliberately displease people. Who cares? If you don't like me, if you're not on my vibe, if you don't respect my books, geh gesund, as we say in Yiddish. Go away, I don't care. That's your thing, right? So being bolder, not caring about what people think about you, is probably the most important lesson I carried away from 50. I remember seeing him in meetings. He was very, very powerful in meetings. He hardly ever talked. And he explained to me it was his strategy. He was very conscious of this. He let everybody else talk, and he made them think, does 50 actually like what I'm saying? I feel kind of insecure. I don't know whether I'm pleasing him or not. And then if he didn't like a deal, he would walk away, or he would not be committal. And that kind of power of not caring, of not being so tied into pleasing people and getting a deal done and talking about himself, just emanated power. And so he said, Robert, I've noticed something about you. He was kind of criticizing me, and I don't mind criticism. I actually enjoy it. He said, I noticed, Robert, that you shake your head a lot when you're listening, right? I go, yeah. He goes, that's kind of a little bit weak, Don't do that so much. Okay, 50, and I've learned that. Now when I'm on phone calls with him, I make damn well sure I don't shake my head. But even in general, I stop doing that when people are talking. You can do it a little bit, but it starts to make you seem like the most important thing is agreeing with them, right? I learned not to be so afraid of taking risks, of doing things that are different and bold and offending people, which was a lesson. And then, obviously, 50 was shot 9 times from, like this range here. He came this close to dying. So when you face death like that, what are you going to be afraid of, right? I mean, what worse can happen to you than getting shot right there in your face? Not much. So physically, he had lost his fear of death. And that's an incredibly powerful feeling. So when he launched his mixtape campaign that made him who he is today, a campaign that I talked about very deeply in the 50th Law, and something that I found incredibly impressive. It was right after he was shot, and he goes, I am going to get revenge on all the people that doubted me, that cut off my contract, that said 50 is too dangerous, that we can't have business with them. I'm going to show them, and I'm going to show them through my actions. I'm going to create this mixtape campaign on the streets of Queens in New York, and I'm going to transform myself into the hottest performer in the country, perhaps in the world. I'm going to get the attention, which he ended up doing, of Eminem. It's going to transform my life. Well, that kind of boldness, that kind of sense of a mission in life, where nobody's going to stop you, where I have an ambition and it's get rich or die trying, as he said, had an incredible impact on me as well, right? So when I'm thinking about a book, my next book, et cetera, or about where I'm going in life, I'm not worried about what happened before or what people think of me or whatever. I put everything into it, and I'm certain that I'm on the right path. I don't have any doubts. I put all of my energy into it, and I have a kind of boldness and even carelessness and recklessness in what I do, because the energy that you bring to it is what ends up exciting people. So I also learned from 50 his sense of being connected to the streets, of his anger, which he felt very deeply. He had a lot of anger in him about other rappers, about how he had been treated by certain people. He channeled it into his work, and he made it something you feel in his songs and his music. And I learned in creating my books, prior to working with 50, but certainly since then, to not be afraid of that anger and to put it in there and to express it in my writing and in all of the work that I do. And so the main thing that I got from 50 is his calmness. Whenever things are going on around him that are or people are panicking, etc., he is always very calm and secure. And I've always sort of admired that in him, and I always wished I had that quality. And so when I think about those moments in my life where I'm getting panicky and worried about things and worried about what I have to accomplish and how things might be going wrong, I remember that moment where I saw him in the midst of a crisis, being completely placid and serene and guiding everybody else. And I go, that's my icon. That's what I want to be like whenever I'm facing a panicky situation. I could go on and on and on. His work ethic and all these things, and also his pleasant demeanor. He very much doesn't have any negative energy. He doesn't complain. And being somebody from my background who likes to complain a lot, I went, I could complain less. I could be more like that. Here's somebody who should be able to complain about so many things, but I never heard 50 complain about anything. I don't mean to make him out to be a saint, because he's not. Nobody is. But these are some of the great things that I learned from him, just in his manner and how he carried himself, and how I would like to emulate those qualities.